Gather around and welcome back to Todd Talks College Football. We got an exciting show for you today. We're going to talk about the Big Ten. We're going to look at win-loss totals for those teams up against two of the major online sports books that you can go to. Now, this is an entertainment purposes only video, but you do with the information what you please. We're going to go alphabetical order for the Big Ten, and we're going to look at two different books. One, and we're going to just call them by their initials. We don't need to promote them, but FD, the other one being DK. We're going to go with the over-under for each of those. Most of them are the same for the Big Ten. I think there's three that are a little different, but we'll walk through each one of those against the teams, see where there's a good value in the season, early season win-loss totals for these football teams. We're going to start with the Illinois Fighting Illini. And if you saw my Baker's Dozen poll, you'll notice that I had this team ranked at 12 in my preseason Baker's Dozen. I really like the Illinois Fighting Illini this season. We have a little difference of opinion here on the two books. We have the FD given the over-under on win total for Illinois at 8.5, and we have DK at 7.5. If you look at the schedule, their toughest games are at Duke, at Indiana, USC at home, Ohio State at home, and at Washington. So there's 5 questionable games. I think they can win the other games. They're Western Illinois, Western Michigan, Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Northwestern. I'm going to put them down in the win column on those games. So we have these 5 games. So that gives them 7 wins there. Again, we were at 7.5, 8.5. I think they can split the Duke, Indiana road games. That gives them 8 wins. I think they can split the Washington, Ohio State matchups and gives them 9 wins. And I think that they can beat USC, which could get them up to 10 wins. So this is a really nice line here early in the season because I really do believe that Illinois is going to get to 9 wins, and they're 8.5 again on FD, but they're only 7.5 on DK. So I would really think that this is a really strong pick for the Illinois Fighting Illini to get over 8.5 wins, but for sure to get over the second line at 7.5. I really like Illinois this year coming in. I think they're for sure a 9-win team, and I think they could literally get to 10 wins. I think they can get an upset here that's going to be real powerful for them and even maybe make it to the college football playoff. So we're going to see where they go, but I think you're really strong at taking the over on the 8.5, but I really like the over on the 7.5. We're going to look at Indiana, the Hoosiers, and Kurt Signetti here in his second season. Exciting times. They got Fernando Mendoza coming in. They got some transfers. They got a lot of talent back. 9 offensive starters, 10 or 7 defensive starters. Really looking for another good year for Indiana. The books agree here at 8.5 over under on the win total. So let's look at this schedule here. I'm going to give them wins. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, first 3 games, win, win, win. They have Illinois at home and then at Iowa the next week. I'm going to go ahead and give them a split on that. I think they're going to lose to Illinois, maybe win to Iowa, vice versa. Give them a split there. That's a 4 wins right there. We got at Oregon. I'm going to put them down in the L column there. We got Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland as the next 3 at Maryland. I'm going to go ahead and rack those up for wins for them. We got at Penn State. I'm going to say that is a loss. And Wisconsin and Purdue to end the season. I'm going to put 2 wins there in the win column for that. So again, we had 8.5 on the books, and I'm counting up 1, 2, 3 losses that I wrote down there, which was a split between Illinois and Iowa. Could lose either one of those 2 games. At Oregon and at Penn State. So that's 3 losses that I'm going to give them for sure. They could lose both to Illinois, Iowa. Who knows? Maybe they could slip up at Michigan or to Michigan State, or I just don't see Wisconsin, Purdue, Maryland, or UCLA beating this team. this year. So I'm going to put them down for 9 wins. They're at 8.5 over under. I'm pretty comfortable at 9. It's really questionable on whether or not you want to put this money down, or fake money, as we like to say, on that 8.5. They could slip up somewhere. I'm not seeing it, but it's really tough. This isn't as Illinois was almost a sure thing. I'm real kind of soft on this. So I think 9 wins is where they're going to go this season. 8.5, yeah, I'd be better if it was 8 and then get them to 9, but 8.5 could be tricky. So I would stay away from Indiana on this. I feel like they're going to be a good team, 9-3. They could maybe pull an upset, get to 10-2. If they did that, then the 8.5 would be great. But I'm going to go ahead and stay off of this. I'm going to give them 9 wins, but I'm going to stay kind of light on taking Indiana in this situation. Let's talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yes, Kirk Ferentz is 100th year there at Iowa, and still running a 100-year-old offense down there. But I think they got a little bit more skill this year and maybe a better quarterback to maybe pull some things out, but it's going to be tough going there. The books got them at 7.5, and they both agree over under win total at 7.5 for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now let's look at this schedule. They're going to be playing Albany. I'm going to give them a win there. They're going to Iowa State. I think that's going to be a very tough go there at Iowa State, and I think we're going to put them down for a loss. They got Massachusetts and Rutgers the next 2 games. They're at Rutgers. Could be challenging, but I'm going to put them down for wins in that column there for Rutgers and Iowa State. They got Indiana at home. I'm going to go ahead and give them the loss in this situation. And I just told you that I thought Indiana was going to split the Illinois and Iowa game. I think they're going to lose to Illinois, and I think they're going to beat Iowa here in this thing. They're going to at Wisconsin, which I'm going to go ahead and rack them up for a win here at Wisconsin. They got Penn State coming up there, and I'm going to give them a loss on that one too. Penn State's just too talented this year to lose to Iowa, even if it's on the road. We got Minnesota at home and Oregon at home. I'm going to go ahead and that's a toughie there. I mean, Minnesota could be pretty good, a solid team. That's a toss-up game. Oregon's a loss. They're going to USC. I'm going to go ahead and put them down for a loss on that road travel to the West Coast. They got Michigan State as their home close game, and then they're going to Nebraska. I'm going to go ahead and give them a loss to Nebraska and give them the win at Michigan State. So if that is where we're looking at, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potential losses here, potentially 7. It's not going to be a super great season for the Iowa Hawkeyes as it stands now with this schedule. They put them at 7.5 on the win total. I like 6 to 7 wins max. I don't think this is an 8-win team this year with this schedule. I'm going to go ahead and take the under of 7.5 on the Iowa Hawkeyes with what they've got coming back. Even though they're going to probably be better, I just don't see them winning some of these games at USC, Oregon, Penn State. Although they do have both those teams at home, I don't think it's going to matter this year. 7.5 is what the book says. I'm going under at 6 to 7 wins for the Iowa. All right, let's talk about the Maryland Terrapins now. This is Mike Lockley there as head coach of the Terrapins, and we have an over-under from the books at 4.5 games, and they both agree. So let's take a quick look at the schedule here. We got FAU, Northern Illinois, and Townsend. I'm going to go ahead and start the Maryland Terrapins at 3-0 this season. It's going to be exciting around College Park, I believe is what they call it over there. But it's going to get disastrous from there, folks. They're going to Wisconsin, although I don't think Wisconsin's going to win a lot of games this year. I think they're going to win this one. They got Washington at home and Nebraska at home. I just don't see Maryland having enough for them. They're going to UCLA. I'm a little worried off those two beatdowns they're going to take with Washington and Nebraska if they're going to have enough to travel the West Coast. Let's go ahead and say they could win that game. Maybe not, but they could. Let's give them 4 there. They got Iowa, they got Indiana at home. They're going to lose that game. They're going to Rutgers, to Illinois, to Michigan State, and Michigan at home. I don't see very many wins on this schedule. And at 4.5, I'm thinking 3. I'm going to give them one more. And could they pull an upset to get to 5? They were 4-8 last year. I just don't see them improving much. They got a freshman quarterback. They've lost all their production at the receiver core, although they do have some transfers coming in this year. And their running backs their leading rushers gone. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to put any money here, fake money again, but I think Maryland's an under 4.5 team this year. And that's where I think we're going to be with the Maryland Terrapins. Here we go with the Michigan Wolverines. They got freshman phenom Bryce Underwood under center this year, we think. And they got a load of defenders coming back in 7. That should make this defense pretty strong. The question here is, can Bryce Underwood go on the road 6 times over and win these games? I think it's going to be a tough call for him to be asked to take this road schedule on and take it and get more than 9.5 wins on FD and 8.5 wins on DK. So they're a little different by 1 game in their predictions on here. And I'm liking the 8.5 more than the 9.5 for sure. And I'm still thinking the 8.5 is a half a game too much. So let's look at it here. We got New Mexico coming into the big house on the first week, and I think they're going to win that game. They're going to Oklahoma in the second week, and I'm telling you, folks, you heard it here first. Oklahoma's got one of the best defenses. Michigan's got a great defense. This game's going to be a defensive struggle, and I think Oklahoma is going to pull this game out at home with the more experienced quarterback, and I'm going to put Michigan down for a loss on the road at Oklahoma. They got Central Michigan coming in the next week. They're going to win that game to put them at 2 wins. They're going to Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to be a much improved team this year, and I'm not going to take the Wolverines on the road at Nebraska this year in the 4th game of the season. They have Wisconsin for homecoming. I'm going to go ahead and rack that up as a win. Then they go to USC and home against Washington. I think that's a split. I think they're going to get one of those 2 games. I'm going to say they're going to win the Washington game at home and lose the USC on the road. They play at Michigan State. I feel like this is Michigan State's year to have a game against Michigan and beat them. I'm going to give them a loss there, but it could be a win. Purdue with the win, Northwestern with the win, Maryland with the win, and then they got the big game, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I'm telling you, there's no way Ryan Day is losing this year to Michigan. You heard it here first. He is going to win that game, hell or high water. I'm putting Michigan down for a loss. I think Bryce Underwood have already had a pretty big beat down through this season, and he will be challenging to stay in there. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got him down for 5 losses right this moment. That puts him at 7 and 5 to finish the season. We're at 8.5 and 9.5. I'm going to go ahead and throw the 1 win maybe to Michigan State and get them to 8. But I don't see how they're going to get to 8.5, 9.5 for this Michigan Wolverines team. So that's where we're at with Michigan. I'm going to give them an 8-4 finish under both lines at 9.5 and 8.5. I really do like the under on the 9.5. Let's talk about Sparty. Yes, the Michigan State Spartans. They're coming in this season with Jonathan Smith, their 2nd-year head coach, coming out of the West Coast, bringing his style into Michigan State. And I think they're going to be a little better this year than the 5-7 they were last year, but not a lot better. All right, they have 5.5 on both books, over under 5.5 wins. Let's look at this schedule. We got Michigan State, Boston College, and Youngstown State at home. Go Penguins. I hope they can pull that game out, but we're going to go ahead and give Michigan State 3 wins in that thing. I think they can beat Boston College at home. They are going to USC. I think USC will just be getting their groove in about that time. I'm going to put them down as a loss there. They got at Nebraska. Again, I told you earlier, I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good on the last cover, and I think we're going to give them a loss there. They're going UCLA at home. I'm going to go ahead and give them the win here. I think they can win this home game. It's homecoming, so Michigan State will be fired up to win that game. They're on the road at Indiana and at Michigan. I think they can split those games. I just told you I think they could beat Michigan. They could lose that game, but either way, we'll give them a win and a loss in that category there. At Minnesota, I think is going to be a challenge and a loss. Penn State at home, at Iowa, loss, and Maryland at home with the win. So I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They were at 5.5. They might pull a win out here. I think 6-6 is where this Michigan State team's probably going to end up. Too close to 5.5 to take, but I think they might just sneak over the finish line to get the 6 wins, make them bowl eligible, and give Jonathan Smith a little upswing into the bowl season and maybe into next year. We have the Minnesota Golden Gophers up next, and they have an over-under at 7.5 games. And we all know one thing about PJ Fleck is he seems to win 8 games every single year. So 7.5 seems to be about the right line. Let's take a little look here. We've got Buffalo and Northwestern State as the first two. We're going to chuck those two down in the win column. They're going to Cal. Now, that probably will be some kind of weird, like 11 o'clock Eastern time start or something like that. And I'm still going to give them the win, even though I think Cal might be a more improved team this year, but I'm not going to give it to them on that one there. They're going Rutgers at home for a win. So we're starting off at 4-0 there at Minnesota until they roll into the shoe and play the Buckeyes. They're going to get a loss there. They got Purdue at home. They're going to get a win there. They got Nebraska at home. I'm going to put them down for a loss to Nebraska. Again, I told you again, I think Nebraska might be pretty good. They're going to Iowa. I'm going to give them a loss there, although that's a game they could win. Michigan State at home with the win, at Oregon with the loss, finishing up at Northwestern and Wisconsin. 2 more wins gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 losses and 8 wins. Puts us right back where we thought we would be with the PJ Fleck team at 8-4. 7.5 is the line. I never like it when it's close like that, but in this instance, I'm going to take the 8-4 and go with the over on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. All right, let's move on to the Nebraska Cornhuskers and Dylan Raiola and Matt Rule in his 3rd year, coming off a 7-6 season up there in Lincoln, Nebraska. The book has them at 7.5 wins, and I really thinking the over here, folks, is a really good pick for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. We're starting off with Cincinnati and Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and I think they're going to win that game. They're going to win against Akron and Houston Christian, and then they got Michigan rolling into Lincoln, and I feel like they're going to get that win. So they're going to start this season off at 4-0. Michigan State coming in for homecoming. Maryland on the road. That's 2 more wins. We're starting off at 6-0 for the Cornhuskers. Next up, they go to Minnesota, which I just said I think Nebraska is going to win that game at Minnesota. Northwestern, another win. This is putting them at, 8-0 to start the season for the Cornhuskers here. This is unbelievable. We got USC at home and at UCLA. I'm going to give them a split here on those 2 games. Probably win USC and lose at UCLA or vice versa. At Penn State, loss, and then Iowa at home day after Thanksgiving. And I think it's a win. That schedule tells you that they're 10-2. Now, I don't think Nebraska's a 10-2 football team. But here's what I do know. They're over 7.5. The 7.5 is what we had down there for both polls at 7.5. I got this team 9-3, potentially 10-2, could be 8-4. No matter what it is, it's over 7.5. Let's talk about the Wildcats in Northwestern, and it's going to be a challenge this year up there in Evanston. And we have the over/under on the books at 3.5 wins for the Wildcats. Well, they're going to be mild if they only get 3 wins. Let's look at this schedule. They're going on the road to Tulane to start the season, and I hate to say it, but Tulane is going to beat Northwestern to hand them that first loss. They got Western Illinois week 2. I'm going to give the Wildcats that victory there. They're going Oregon coming into Northwestern on week 3. Just won't be enough there for the Wildcats to keep up in that game. They got UCLA at home. I'm going to put them down for an L there too. We've got University of Louisiana Monroe coming in. We'll give them a victory there. We got at Penn State. I'm going to put them down for a loss. We've got Purdue at home. Boy, this could be the battle of the cellar. We'll give them a win because they're playing at home there. And then they got Nebraska at USC, Michigan, Minnesota, and at Illinois, folks. That is a 5-loss stretch to end the season. So we've got potentially here, I got them down for 3. Could they sneak out 4? They went 4-8 last year. I'm staying the hell away from it. I'm putting them down for 3-9 and the under at 3.5, but I'm running away from the Northwestern Wildcats. We are on to the Ohio State University Buckeyes, and they have them at 10.5, and both books agree here. 10.5 on the over/under, and let's take a look at this schedule, and we all know who it starts with. Texas coming into the shoe, and it is going to be a challenge for both teams here, and who is going to get the victory? I'm going to give it to Ohio State on paper because they're playing at home, first game, home crowd. Even though it's a noon game, the Buckeye fans are going to be ready, coming off a national championship season, waiting to see Julian Sayin at the quarterback position and waiting to see the one, the only Jeremiah Smith in action. So let's get down to business here. Texas, we're going to give them a win. Grambling in Ohio, we're going to give them a win. We're going to at Washington. And folks, let me tell you, this is a very challenging game. Washington has a second longest win streak in the country, home win streak, that is. And we're going to go ahead, and I will come back to that in just a second. Let's talk about Minnesota at home. I'm going to put them down for the win there. All right, let's get back to at Washington and at Illinois are the 2 games sandwiched around that Minnesota game. All right, I think we're going to have a split here. I'm not sure which team they're going to lose to, but I think they're going to lose one of those 2 road games, either at Washington or at Illinois, to give them the 1 loss right there. They're going to at Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin's going to have enough horses to run with them. They got Penn State at home, and we'll roll right back to that in just a second. Let's run through this next group. Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. At Purdue, a win. UCLA at home, a win. And Rutgers at home, a win. That gives us Penn State and Michigan. So we were at 10.5. I'm putting them down for 1 loss right now in the books, with the split between either Illinois or Washington on both those games on the road. They could lose to the Texas Longhorns and then beat Penn State and Michigan. Bottom line here is I think there's 2 losses on this schedule, and at 10.5, it's not the over. So I am going to stay away, far away from this line. In the next 2 teams, I think we're going to be very similar boats too. But I think the Buckeyes are looking at a 10-2 season. It wouldn't surprise me to be 11-1. It would shock me to be 9-3. But I'm going to go 10-2, which puts us a half game under the 10.5 line. Which brings us to the Oregon Ducks, another 10.5 line. Both books agree 10.5 is what they think they'll be. And I think they're real damn close. So let's take a look. We got Montana State, Oklahoma State, and Northwestern the first three games. They are going on the road at Northwestern. That won't be hard. They are going to have 3 wins after that. They got the Civil War, if we're still allowed to call it that, the Oregon State Beavers coming into town. Chuck that up as a win for the Ducks. They're going on the road to Penn State. Now, I think it's definitely a whiteout. I checked today, and it is going to be very tough going for the Oregon Ducks at Penn State, and I think they're going to drop that game. Might be close, but I think they're going to drop it. They got a bye week. They got Indiana coming in at home. I think they're going to beat Indiana coming off that loss to Penn State and the bye week. They then have at Rutgers and Wisconsin at home, which chucked them up for 2 wins there. They're going on the road to Iowa. Whew, it's going to be a challenge. We're going to put them down for a win there. I think they'll have too much for the Hawkeyes late in the season. Minnesota at home, USC at home, and at the Washington Huskies. I am going to chalk them up for a loss at Washington. I think Washington's going to be improved, and I think they're going to pull that game out at the end of the season and beat the Ducks, which would give the Ducks, much like Ohio State we just talked about, at 10-2, while their over-under was 10.5. So I think you're probably best off to stay the under or to stay the hell away. Now we move on to the Penn State Nittany Lion. James Franklin coming back, leading his team. You got Jim Knowles at defense coordinator. He's got Drew Aller in his forever season to go. His last one for sure, folks. And he's got the best pair of running backs in the country in Singleton and Katron Allen. We got an over-under, just like the last 2 teams, Ohio State and Oregon, at 10.5. And I think this, folks, is the one that you might get the over on here. Let's look at it. We got Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. Whew, what a schedule. That's 3 wins right there, folks. And then they got a bye week, and they got the Ducks coming in for the whiteout. And we're going to go ahead and knock Penn State down for a win. They're going to UCLA, which if there was a slip-up game in this season, this is it. Coming off the big win at at Oregon, at home at Oregon, with the whiteout, and then turning around and taking a trip out to UCLA, and I think a better team. The record might not be what they think, but I think a better team than what people are going to think they are in the UCLA Bruins. I'm going to go ahead and give them the win, but it wouldn't surprise me if they lost that game. They got Northwestern at home. They're on the road at Iowa, and they're just going to be too much for Iowa's defense this year. They're at Ohio State, and let's just see if James Franklin can actually get a victory here at the Shoe. And I am going to put him down as a no. I think this will be a game that Ohio State will pull out, much like last year, in an ugly fashion, but they will pull this thing out. They got Indiana at home. They got at Michigan State. They got Nebraska at home, and they got at Rutgers, and I think they can clear out those 4 teams for 4 wins. That makes me looking at them at 11-1 with 1 loss to Ohio State. Maybe a slip up at UCLA could come at Iowa, but I don't know that I'm going to bet on it. So we're going to say 11-1 for the Penn State Nittany Lions, and they are at 10.5. So this is a great place to run away and say 10-2 will be just fine and get them to where they want to be in the playoff. I think 11-1. I'm sorry, folks, but the alphabet has brought us to the Purdue Boilermakers, and here we go with Purdue. They're sitting at 3.5 on the over-under win line. Where can they get 3.5? That would be a big improvement on the 1-11 season they had last year. So let's take a look at the schedule and see if they can actually get 3.5 wins. They've got Ball State and Southern Illinois first 2 weeks, and I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to win those two games and it's going to be exciting in West Lafayette. They got double the wins of last year, and then they got USC coming to town. They're on the road at Notre Dame. They got Illinois at home. They're on the road at Minnesota, at Northwestern, Rutgers at home, at Michigan, Ohio State at home, at Washington, and at Indiana. And let me tell you, folks, I don't see another victory on that list, but we're going to go ahead and chalk one up for them because I think they'll win one Big Ten game this year, which will be a major improvement. So we're going to say 3-9 for the Purdue Boilermakers. And like I told you, the lines say, well, I'm sorry, we have a split line here. We have a 3.5 on the FD and a 2.5 on the DK. I think if you take the DK 2.5, you might get lucky and get a win, or you just take the under at the 3.5 on the FD and you'll get the win. No more than 3 wins for this Purdue Boilermaker team in 2025. Sorry to say, Barry. Good luck in the future. Let's move on to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and Graciano. Coming off a 7-6 season, he is returning 9 offensive starters and 7 defensive starters of this team, but we'll see if he can get any progress off that 7-6. I think he might be taking a step backwards, and so do the lines. They got him at 5.5 wins, folks, on both lines. And let's take a look at this schedule. They got the Ohio Bobcats, and then they got the Miami of Ohio Red Hawks in the first 2 weeks. And both MAC teams could pull an upset, but we're going to go ahead and give them the wins there to give them 2. And then they got Norfolk State coming in. We'll go ahead and knock them down for a win for 3. They're going on. They got Iowa at home, at Minnesota, at Washington, Oregon at home. Let's chalk those up as loss. 4 in a row there for the Scarlet Knights. They get lucky and they got to go to Purdue. And I don't think coming off of 4 losses, Graciano is going to lose to Purdue. We'll chuck them up for a win there. They're going to Illinois after that, chuck them down for a loss. They got Maryland. This will be their last potential win of the season, folks. I think they can pull this out. They finish off the season, oh boy, at Ohio State and Penn State at home. Couldn't get worse for old Greg at the end of that season. So we had them at, what'd we say, 5.5 wins. And I've got them for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses, which puts them at 5-7. And we're at 5.5. I'm comfortable saying they're not going to get there, folks. 5 wins max for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. The UCLA Bruins is up next, and this is Deshaun Foster's second season, right? Yeah, second season here out there in Pasadena. And I tell you, I watched them last year a lot, and I thought they played a lot better than their 5-7 record, but they're still not there yet, and this is not going to help, ladies and gentlemen. They've pulled about the 8th toughest schedule in the country. They've got them at 5.5 wins on both of the books, and 5.5 wins is going to definitely be a challenge this year with this schedule. So let's take a look at it here. Lucky for them, they got to start the season with the Utah Utes. Boy, the Utah is going to be an improved team this year. UCLA was going to have to play their butts off to beat this team at home, and I don't think they can pull it out in the first week of the season. I'm going to chuck them down for a loss there. Unfortunately for them, they got to go at UNLV the next week, and UNLV is coming off of an 11-3 season, but they got a big change in Dan Mullins at coach, and they are going to be really fired up to bring the Bruins there to Las Vegas and see what they can do. This is a pick'em game for me, folks, and I don't know where to go with it, so I'm going to leave it alone now, and we'll give UCLA a half a win here if they come down to needing that half a win. We got New Mexico. I'm going to go ahead and give them the chalk the win up there for them at Northwestern. Win there. We've got Penn State coming out to UCLA. I thought this could be maybe a slip-up game for Penn State because they're playing Oregon and they got to travel the whole thing, but I'm going to say no. At Michigan State, loss. Maryland at home. We'll give them a win there. I think they can beat Maryland because of the West Coast travel. At Indiana, sorry, Charlie, they're losing that one. They got Nebraska coming into Pasadena. I don't think they can win that game either. They got at Ohio State, Washington at home, and at USC to finish off the season. I'm going to knock them down for loss. So what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 losses there. Maybe, just maybe, they can turn one of those into a victory. Still puts them at 5 wins, even if they could pull one out, and the 5.5 was the line. I'm thinking you're an under here for the Bruins, although I'm a big Bruins fan. I love the uniforms, one of the best in college football, and I hope they can get better soon. And obviously, the Rose Bowl is the best venue in college football to watch a football game, bar none. All right, now we move across to LA and we see about the USC Trojans. That's right, the Fighting Trojans of USC are going to be, where are we at here today with them? We're at 7.5. Both lines agree. 7.5's the number to be. They should have a pretty good offense this year and maybe an improved defense. We'll see what the schedule looks like here. They got Missouri State, Georgia Southern, and at Purdue. Not Georgia Southern. Yeah, Georgia Southern, Missouri State, Georgia Southern at Purdue. We can chalk them up. Lincoln Riley's going to be a happy camper out there in LA. He's going to be 3-0 going into on the road at Michigan State. I think they can win that game. They're at Illinois, and there's no way they're winning that game. They got Michigan at home, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska. Whew, that's a roughie there, folks. We'll give them one. I'll give them one of those 3. They'll get the Michigan or at Nebraska, at Notre Dame. I'm going to give them one of those 3 games. Not sure which one, but they'll get one. Oh, shoot, my microphone. Oh, my God. Northwestern. Iowa coming out home to them. At Oregon, UCLA. I think they can win 3 of the 4 of those, losing that game to Oregon. So we're going to give them, what we got there, 1, 2, 3, 4 losses for sure. They're at 8 wins. 7.5 is the line. I think the USC Trojans are going to pull out 8 wins and beat that 7.5 line. Our last 2, and the next one is the Washington Huskies. And let me tell you something. This is going to be a much improved team under Jed Fish in his second season out there in Seattle. Let's take a look at their 7.5 is the over-under win total for the Huskies on both books. So we got an agreement there at 7.5. I like this team this year. Let's take a look at this schedule. I got Colorado State and UC Davis at home. We're going to chalk up 2 wins right there for the Huskies. They're going to Washington State in the Apple Cup, and I think they can pull this one out. Give them 3 wins. They got Ohio State at home, and like I told you earlier, folks, I think Ohio State's going to lose one of the 2 road games between Washington or Illinois. I don't know if this will be the one that Washington wins, but they're going to win one of these big games. I can promise you that. We'll see. So we're going to go ahead and hold off on that. We're going to have half a game. We got at Maryland. That's a win. Rutgers at home is a win. At Michigan, I'm going to put them down for a loss at Michigan this year. Illinois at home, I'm going to go ahead and split that Ohio State and Illinois game for the Washington Huskies and give them that second loss on the season. They got at Wisconsin. I think they'll be too much for the Badgers. Purdue at home. That's a win. At UCLA, I'm going to put them down for a win, and they've got the Oregon Ducks coming in at the end. So let's see where we are with the Washington Huskies at 7.5, 7.5 on the over-under. I got the Washington Huskies 9-3, 10-2, 8-4 at the worst. No matter where you go, this is a lock, folks. The Washington Huskies are going to get over 7.5 wins this year, even if they lost to Oregon, the Illinois, the Michigan, and the Ohio State game. That still gets them to 8-4. I think they'll pull one, maybe two of those games out in a surprise, and could even potentially be knocking on the door for a playoff in Jed's second year out there in Washington. Well, that brings us to our final team, the Wisconsin Badgers, and Luke Fickell in his third year out here at Wisconsin. Now, I thought Luke would be on his way to turning the Badgers around by now. 5-7 last year, maybe making some progress, moving on up this year. Unfortunately for that group in Madison, they drew the toughest, and I mean the number one toughest schedule in the country, bar none. And it is not looking very good for the Wisconsin Badgers. The both books have them at 5.5 over under on the win total. And I'm looking at the schedule, folks, and it's going to be extremely challenging to get there. We are going to start off with Miami of Ohio coming in to Madison, followed by Middle Tennessee. And we're going to chalk them up as 2 wins for that Badgers there. Then, luckily for them, they take a little trip down to Tuscaloosa. They're going to get their doors blown off, and that'll be their first loss of the many here in the rest of the season. They do get Maryland the next week at home, and I think they can beat Maryland, and then it gets real ugly from there, folks. At Michigan, Iowa at home, Ohio State at home, at Oregon is the next stretch of 4, and that is going to be 4 straight losses for the Wisconsin Badgers. And just to make sure they didn't feel bad enough about that, they get a bye week to recover, and they play Washington, at Indiana, Illinois, and at Minnesota. And I don't think there's another win on the schedule in that group of 4. That's going to put this team at 3 wins for the season, 6, 7, 8 straight losses to end it. And I don't think they can get anywhere near 5.5 wins at the Wisconsin Badgers, although I do believe this will be a better football team than their record. Their record is just going to reflect the number 1 toughest schedule in the country. So knock them under 5.5, and it'll be a bad day for Luke Fickell, although I do think he'll get another year there in Madison, because everyone knows this schedule is just a burden. Well, there's our totals for the Big Ten against the spread on the over-under on the FD and DK apps. So I hope you enjoyed that, give you valuable information going into the season. Now, I'm going to give you a couple parlays here to finish off the show. And the first one will be my over 7.5 parlay this year. All these teams are at 7.5 on the win total on the DK app, and I'm going to give you Illinois over 7.5, parlayed with Nebraska over 7.5, parlayed with Washington over 7.5. I think all 3 of those teams are going to be over 7.5, at least 8-4 this year, if not 9-3. I think that's a great over parlay on the 7.5 win total for those teams. Now, let's look at the under win totals on the lines and see what we got there. I like Wisconsin under 5.5. I like Purdue under 3.5. And I like the Maryland Terrapins under 4.5. Put those 3 together, and you got an under win parlay on both books, I believe, on that. Yes. So we've got Wisconsin under 5.5, Purdue under 3.5, Maryland under 4.5 to give you that second parlay. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and we'll be bringing you the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 coming up soon. And as always, gather round in ALTT. See you soon.